Well, don't look away now. With each passing day, the Chinese election interference story continues to get worse for Justin Trudeau. As MPs prepare to battle it out on committee floors, and as CSIS leaks continue to find a home on the front page of the Globe and Mail, perhaps the worst news of all has befallen our embattled Prime Minister. That being that the NDP, the fake socialists who shamelessly carried the government to the use of the Emergencies Act, are starting to turn on the government. Calling in the horses, invoking the Emergencies Act on the Freedom Convoy was all well and good, but Chinese election interference, that's a step too far for the NDP. How much longer can Justin Trudeau seriously hold on to the job if he can't even hold the NDP on his side? Drop a like in the video, help us out by subscribing to the True North YouTube channel, and the comment question for the episode is this: how much longer will we have to wait until we start to see resignations inside the Liberal caucus? Let me know, and let's get into it. Now, every day, there's new information coming out about the Chinese election interference story, thanks to, of course, CSIS leaks that are finding their way onto the front page of the Globe and Mail. But first, let's start off with the most important news, the most important and timely news. That being what is taking place right now in the Procedure and House Affairs Committee. Opposition MPs in that committee are currently debating the details of an NDP motion to force MPs to vote on a national inquiry into foreign election interference. Now, although the NDP call for a national inquiry does signal the first cracks in the foundation of the Justin Trudeau Liberal Jagmeet Singh NDP coalition deal, it's not exactly black and white. The Conservatives are still accusing the NDP of covering up for the Prime Minister. The Conservative line of attack is that the NDP want to broaden the scope of this inquiry so much that it can't possibly get to the bottom of what's really going on. They're trying to delay the process, and they're trying to keep important people like Katie Telford, the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, from testifying. Conservative MP Michael Cooper even went so far as to tell Peter Julian, the NDP MP on the committee, to cross the floor and to just join the Liberals already.
Again, the coalition at work, the NDP doing absolutely everything to assist the Liberals in covering up this scandal. And, quite frankly, at some point, maybe Peter Julian ought to just consider crossing the floor and joining the Liberals or joining the PMO because he's doing all of their work.
That was this morning. So clearly, it's not like the NDP and the Conservatives are all of a sudden best friends working against the Prime Minister. That being said, the Conservatives, although they do take issue with the NDP motion, they will be supporting the NDP motion and calling for an inquiry as well. The main amendment the Conservatives are trying to get adopted by the committee is to make sure that Justin Trudeau doesn't get to appoint the commissioner to oversee the inquiry, that the commissioner is agreed upon by all members of Parliament. Now, for the past year and a half, Jagmeet Singh's NDP has been the only thing keeping Justin Trudeau in power. The NDP has been the only thing keeping Justin Trudeau in Ottawa and not out in Tofino surfing. And when asked by reporters on Tuesday if Justin Trudeau's refusal to call an inquiry into Chinese election interference would jeopardize the agreement between the NDP and the Liberals, Jagmeet Singh said it wasn't a decision he was going to make today, but that he continued to call on the government to open an inquiry.
Is this an issue that could put your supply and confidence deal with the Liberals at risk if they don't take steps to deal with the serious issue of foreign interference in our elections?
Well, that's not a decision we're making today in terms of if we're going to an election or not, but it is something that we take very seriously. I have made the call for a public inquiry. So far, the Prime Minister has said that's not something he's going to do. We disagree on that. I think it should be a public independent inquiry that investigates this, that assesses the real dangers and provides us with real transparency around what happened and ways that we can prevent it from having an influence in any way on our democratic system. I think that is important to have that independence, assess that risk, and to provide us with recommendations. So I maintain my position, and I will continue to apply pressure on the government to move forward on an inquiry.
Despite all of that, despite all of the pressure coming from his own team, the NDP, despite the pressure coming from legacy media outlets, journalists, and former CSIS directors all calling on the government to open an inquiry, and despite the fact that members inside CSIS are so concerned about Justin Trudeau's lack of action when it comes to election interference that they are now in full revolt against the Prime Minister and leaking everything to the Globe and Mail. Despite all of that, the Prime Minister remains defiant. He refuses to call an inquiry. If you have nothing to hide, then what's the problem?
How will your government respond to that request? I think one of the most important things to remember is we have an awful lot of mechanisms that are underway right now around determining what kind of foreign interference has happened, is continuing to happen, and demonstrating the tools we have. Right now, as we're speaking, our parliamentary committee is hearing directly from national security experts and officials as to the work that they've been doing over the past many years to counter ongoing interference.
Because on Wednesday, Justin Trudeau's national security advisor, Jody Thomas, who many of you remember from the Emergencies Act inquiry, told MPs that Justin Trudeau had been briefed multiple times about election interference in 2019 and 2021.
How many times was the Prime Minister briefed about Beijing's interference in the 2019 and 2021 elections?
The Prime Minister would have been briefed on foreign interference in the elections multiple times between 2019 and 2021 and 2022. We will endeavor to get you those dates.
So you will undertake to provide the dates and the agencies and those involved in briefing the Prime Minister?
We will endeavor to get the dates for you.
Every instance that he was briefed in respect of Beijing's election interference.
I will do my best. But again, I was not in this job at the time.
Briefed multiple times, eh? Well, that doesn't jive too well with what Justin Trudeau was telling reporters back in November about never being briefed about candidates receiving money from China.
But let me be clear. I do not have any information, nor have I been briefed, on any federal candidates receiving any money from China.
Hold on. I'm being far too critical of the Canadian government, aren't I? I'm not giving them nearly enough credit. Because on Tuesday, the Canadian government told us that attempts to interfere in the election in 2021 did not impact the outcome of the election. Because the very conveniently timed report on the Public Election Incident Protocol of 2021 tells us that there's nothing to worry about. What if I told you that the man who wrote that report, the report on Tuesday that says there's nothing to worry about here in Canada, there's no concerns about election interference, what if I told you that that man was the former CEO of the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation? Would you be surprised to hear such a thing? Or might you say to yourself, Justin Trudeau stacking government positions with true loyalists who would never do anything to question his leadership, judgment, or integrity? Tell me something I don't know. That's exactly it, though. The report that tells Canadians there was nothing to worry about in the 2021 election was written by a man named Morris Rosenberg. Morris Rosenberg previously served as the CEO of the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation, and the story gets absolutely hilarious from here. During the time that Morris Rosenberg was the leader of the Trudeau Foundation, a Chinese billionaire named Jiang Bin donated $1 million to the foundation. Of course, totally coincidental, not because Justin Trudeau, the son of the man whose name is on the charity, is the Prime Minister of Canada. Donating to the Trudeau Foundation wouldn't give Jiang Bin any influence over the government. Of course not. Jiang Bin must have been truly moved by the work being done by the Pierre Trudeau Foundation to feel as though that was a good place to put his money. Well, through these CSIS leaks, Jiang Bin, who donated $1 million to the Trudeau Foundation, also was donating lots of money to the University of Montreal. And one of Jiang Bin's requests to the University of Montreal was to erect a statue of Mao, along with Pierre Trudeau, at the foot of the University of Montreal Law School. Now, someone at the University of Montreal had the presence of mind to say no to the Mao and Trudeau statue. I think maybe the optics weren't exactly what they were going for, too on the nose perhaps. But if you're asking me, the University of Montreal is not prominent enough for such a statue. Isn't there a pedestal in the middle of Montreal just waiting for a new statue to be placed on it? But if having what appears to be a coup taking place inside CSIS against the Prime Minister wasn't enough, and if having the NDP turning on the Prime Minister wasn't enough for Justin Trudeau, well, as icing on the cake last night, the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation released a statement saying they would be reimbursing Jiang Bin for a $200,000 donation, saying that they cannot, as a nonpartisan, independent charity, they can keep any donation that may have been sponsored by a foreign government. And if that sounds to you like an admission of guilt, well, you're not alone, because that is exactly what was being discussed on Twitter. A bank robber that returns the money is still a criminal. Yeah, we received this donation back in 2016, but, now it's looking like we probably shouldn't have taken it, so we're going to give it back to you now in 2023. All the influence you were trying to gain out of making that donation has already been given to you, so congratulations, and here's your money back as well. Too little, too late. Only when you were found out do you do this. Political corruption stinks, and you are part of the stench. Just a coincidence, and the drop in donations after your namesake's son leaves office won't drop at all. Not corruption in the least. Never happened before to anyone else in North America who has had a foundation. And take a look at this graph. This is from a National Post article back in 2016. Journalists for many years have known about the details in regards to the Pierre Trudeau Foundation and influence that it may or may not buy you with the sitting Prime Minister of Canada. Now, conveniently, starting in 2014, all of a sudden, a massive spike in foreign donations to the Pierre Trudeau Foundation all of a sudden occurs. But that is surely just a coincidence, not something I think Canadians should be concerned about. That would be, of course, however, if the Trudeau Foundation didn't just basically sink the Prime Minister's political career. The Ratio of the Week award is going to none other than Liberal MP Han Dong for his weak and pathetic statement in the face of allegations that he benefited from Chinese communist election interference. In the statement in which Dong denies the allegations, he conveniently locked replies on his tweet because facing the people is the last thing this Liberal MP would want to do at this moment. He received 514 quote tweets to only 149 likes. George responded by saying, "The fact that you don't allow comments says more about you than your entire statement. Resign." First, this Chinese lackey turns off replies. Then he pretends it's the media calling his loyalty into question. No, sir, it's CSIS, and we know you and at least 10 of your colleagues are compromised, likely far more, including an appointed senator. Time to step down, resign. Liberal MP investigated himself and deemed everything was good to go. Just like the Liberal government investigated themselves and said everything was good to go. That's the pattern, that's their strategy. Do you buy it? Obviously you don't, let's be real. Reminder, let me know in the comments, when will we start to see resignations from the Liberal caucus? Alright, that's going to do it for us this week on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Harrison Faulkner, and this is Ratio.